What's a question you wish more investors asked you?
I think some of them do ask the right question, which is what a question I would ask, which is, why do your customers choose you? But I think really sort of getting underneath, not just like, great product. Everyone can say that, but like really trying to figure out why we're different. And I think everyone does say, oh, we're very scalable, we're very next gen, all of these marketing fluff terms that everyone uses. But like, how do you figure out what really is true? And I think customers understand, because customers have the pain and they have the reason for looking for a solution for their pain. And so they really understand the differences. And so asking those right questions about, what does the customer say? Why do they say that? Tell me something interesting that the customer said that they wouldn't say about anyone else, kind of thing. And I think you'll find those little diamonds that sort of signify that, yes, there's something different here.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today we're thrilled to have Roy Pereira on the mic. He is a ex-founder with multiple exits and now the CEO of Unified.to, a company building real-time data infrastructure for AI native applications. Thanks for coming on, Roy.
Hey, really happy to be here, Brian.
Yeah, so I'd love to start with kind of the way I always lead these things off. What's your background and origin story?
I got my first computer when I was in high school. My mom spent a ton of money and she saw that I loved computers. I was in the computer lab all the time. I wasn't out playing football or anything. I was in the computer lab and I was trying to hack it. And I learned everything that I could. And she thought it'd be good to buy me a computer. So buy one, hack that, and then just loved it. I love how you can just build anything from scratch. Continued on in university.
What kind of computer was it?
You don't want to know. But went on to computer science in university and actually dropped out because I was so bored. And I dropped out in my second year and I actually got a job in computer science. And the rest is history, as they say.
It's amazing. So 4 exits. I mean, what have you learned? Or not 4 exits, but multiple exits, but four-time founder. Is Unified the 5th company?
Yeah, Unified is the 5th company that I've founded personally.
Lucky number 5.
Lucky number 5. It's interesting when
it's going to be the biggest one too. It's going to be the, $50 billion one, I'm pretty sure.
Well, it is already the biggest one in terms of revenue. So that's interesting. We've just hit a nice milestone just recently. And I do believe, I agree with you, and obviously I would, but I do believe that we got the right timing. And so much of life and tech entrepreneurship is about timing. And we got the right timing on this one for sure. We started when ChatGPT 3.5 came out and we were like, wow, that's going to change everything in ways that I don't think we even foresaw. But
we haven't even fully appreciated yet. And it's not even done changing things yet, really.
No, there's a tremendous amount of upheaval, carnage, transformation, if we want to be positive about it. But you're quite correct. This is definitely the start of something massive that I don't think we've seen before. I mean, my first computer was a long time ago. And obviously I went through the .com era of 1999, 2000, 2001 crash. And, the web and cloud was the transformational technology then. And it did kill a tremendous amount of incumbents. I don't think that what we're going through is even in the same category. It is next worse or better, however you want to look at it. More transformational than we saw with the cloud coming in 2000.
Yeah, which was, dramatically transformational for startups, I think, because, you used to have to spend millions of dollars just to get a basic, website going. And now with cloud, you could, just get on the free tier and just start hacking something together. And really could argue like the angel investing community and really like SaaS 2.0 really took off with cloud, right? In the 2010s or late 2000s.
Yeah, if you think about, we've been living in a SaaS world for 25 years, and it's been the same playing field, same rules as an investor. So I'm an angel investor. I know lots of VCs. If you're in that game, you have this playbook, this calculation And it's the SaaS calculation, right? And you know that it's going to increase X% every year. A year ago, 18 months ago, it started to change. And now it's massively different. And I think we're also going through a transformation. So a second level order of transformation in the investment community that invests in tech, because tech is going through this massive transformation.
Yeah, well, we can get into that. I'd love to talk about the impacts of AI and what's changing in my world and your world. But let's talk about what you're building at Unified first, and why does it matter right now?
Yeah, so I was a math geek, and then I became a data geek, I guess, when I really got into computer science. And for the longest time, I've been into APIs, because APIs to me is where the data is. It's where I get access to the data. And I've always been building APIs in my companies. I've always built lots of different APIs. When my companies were acquired, I would go into the acquiring company and I would always look at how they were using APIs. I would always be disappointed. And so the last company was called Zoom.ai, which was a fantastic name at the time. The other Zoom talked to us a bit, but we were friends. Anyways, so we built a ton of integrations. We built like 70 different integrations in-house. And that was so painful. And that was a really good lesson that no one should ever go through that pain. You know, the joke is like I had a full set of hair before we started. Now I don't because of the pain. Not quite true, but and so
For
that's
people
how
driving the car, Roy is clearly doesn't have all his hair. For anybody just not watching the podcast here.
No, I've definitely given up on the hair. And so when we were going through this acquisition in 21, all the strategics were interested in what we had built at Zoom, but they were really excited to ask us questions about the integrations that we built, because we built 70 in-house and we maintained them. And so they were always very curious, and we knew that there was a lot of value there. There was a lot of things that we knew that we didn't do right. But then when ChatGPT 3.5 came out and we were thinking about what to do next, we knew that AI was going to need data. We had built this amazing API infrastructure throughout the years too. It wasn't even the last company. It was like 2 companies ago as well. And so we just kept making it better and better. And so that's why we started Unified. Basically, it's a data infrastructure company for software companies to get access to their customers' data. So not your own internal data, because you can just drag and drop some ETL application or something like that. It's been around for like 40 years.
Right.
When you need to
We'll use Informatica or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, Boomi or whatever, Zapier. How about that? Very popular. So when you need to gain access to your customers' data, you need to authorize access. So they need to give you access to authorize their Salesforce account or QuickBooks. That becomes a bigger pain. And then when you have a new customer and they tell you, hey, I'm not on QuickBooks, I'm on Xero or Sage accounting. And then you're going to have to build an integration. And building, sure, it used to take months. It's obviously faster now, but the maintenance of it is what actually kills companies. And I know this firsthand. Our last company almost died with the 70. That's what we didn't tell the potential acquirers. But yeah, the weight of fixing bugs on these 70 integrations almost killed us because we couldn't build any new functionality, any features. So that was a really good lesson, because when we started Unified.
Does the complexity of doing these APIs, I would imagine it decreases as you support more, but the support tickets increase, right? So what is it about having more integrations that makes it harder?
There are standards out there for a lot of these APIs, both authorization like OAuth 2 or REST API or GraphQL, but everyone does it slightly different. And a lot of them don't even adhere to the standards. They just are like standard-ish. And so there's all these little differences. And then also there's differences between the API documentation that they have and the actual API. That is almost like 75% of the APIs that we support. And we have like almost 500 today. And so something that looks really easy from the outside is actually quite detailed, because you have to get everything correct. It's not like me and you conversing in English and maybe I'll use a different adjective or my grammar will be different than yours and you'll still understand. APIs don't work that way. And so that was the major issue that when we started Unified, we actually looked at that. How do we maintain these so that we then don't take the cost of maintaining, which is the biggest issue, and just transfer it over to our customers? No, let's cut that out so that we offer 10% of the incumbents in terms of price, and then also do a 10x in terms of speed to grow and so forth. So that's what we've done. That's what we did at the beginning when we started the company.
Yeah. So the thesis really is like, hey, there's all these data sources I need to go grab for my platform. My customers need this data. Building all these connectors and maintaining them are undifferentiated work, perhaps. And so like every company out there has the same requirements. What is it about the now though, where you said this is like, we're really timing this perfectly?
Yeah, it goes actually back to this whole, we've been living in the SaaS world for 25 years. And in the cloud, everyone built APIs because they're publicly available and you just give the API documentation to your partners and then they build stuff, which has been the case for 25 years. The more verticals, the more companies within a vertical, obviously you have to do more work. And that was the normal for SaaS. And really SaaS APIs are mostly around onboarding. So you just get a new customer and they have data stuck somewhere else. And so what are they going to do? Upload a CSV file? Sure. Or plug it into an API. So that was the major use case. And I think when you look back at all these previous technologies that have tried to address that, that's really their use case. Could be accounting, could be sales, whatever, but it's the same use case. 2 years ago, ChatGPT 3.5 comes out 3 years ago. And it starts to change how data is being used because now data is not just for onboarding, like upload your employee list to a payroll system. Data is being used transactionally for training and to get results. So obviously first for insights, but now more and more with agents as actual actions to change data. And so that needs very different architecture. And that's something that we saw like right away 3 years ago. And we're like, honestly, we had built a real-time system in the past. So it was kind of easier for us to go in this direction instead of the older, more ETL. But that's what we were skating towards, as they say, right? You skate towards where the puck is going, not where it is. And we saw where the puck was going. It was going to, AI was going to eat up all the data that it can. It ate up all the public data already, but the public data is all public. So there's no differentiation. Like if you're building a B2B application, who cares? All right. What you really want to do is feed it your customer's data. So it really understands who your customer is and how you can help them. So that's what
So you've built companies in multiple spaces, and what's a belief that you had back then in the first 4 companies that you now think is completely wrong?
So after my ad tech company was acquired in 2000 and I don't know, 12, realized that what I thought about how to run a company was wrong. So that was my biggest insight. And I still remember it to this day. And basically it turns into or the founders are the biggest restriction, speed bump. Speed bump's a better word. Speed bump to the growth or potential. And what I mean by that is that we're all human and we all take our beliefs, our neurosis, our fears, all of that in to the company. Our trauma, right? And we're always trying to pattern match. And so we're always trying to stay alive in some ways because it is risky, right? Like especially like you're a 23-year-old kid who's starting up a startup, you don't know how you're going to pay rent. So that fear is the speed bump, right? And I'm not saying, hey, just like drive the bus off the cliff, because that obviously is not great either. But the biggest insight that I had after my first acquisition was that I was the one that kept it slow. I could have gone so much faster when I look back because those fears, they're great, but they weren't there. Right. And so it was really just fear and it wasn't really reality. And so what I've done after that was just go as fast as I can. Something breaks, sure, you fix it. And you do it fast, of course, but you try not to focus too much on what could break and kill you, because what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, I like that. That's good advice.
And so like, what's the best that can happen if you go faster, right? And I think that's the major thing that I've learned and I've tried to do at all of the companies. That's one thing now that everybody is always mentions. It's like, how the hell do you guys go so fast? And I'm like, because there's a massive lion behind me and it's going to eat us and we have to go fast.
Who's the lion you worry about the most?
There's a lot of lions.
Yeah.
Technology moves so fast. Like, look at what's happening right now. My God, like we are seeing a massive upheaval in the entire software industry. Like I've never seen this. Like we can get into that, but maybe big guys coming in, competitors, but those I don't really care. I've never cared If you listen to your customer, you will always outrun them. That's not the issue. The issue, the big lion, is time, because tech changes and tech is changing faster. So it's accelerating the change. And now I think we've seen a massive, massive acceleration. So it's really about time. And can you stay ahead? Can you stay within that MVP window? Not MVP, sorry, product market fit, PMF window, where you are matching what the market wants, because the market changes all the time. Your customers aren't churning, but they are talking about you, right? So you'll always get some churn depending on your vertical, but are your current customers talking about you? Can they live without you? I think the best PMF calculation was the Superhuman guy. He wrote a paper and it was really good. And I thought that he really put it succinctly. It's like, what happens if your customer no longer has the ability to use you? I think that is the measure of product market fit.
Yeah, it's like really painful if your product goes away, basically. How many people are, I think it's like Dan Ellis or one of these guys. How many people would be in significant pain if your product was taken away tomorrow?
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, we've tried to create a product that is very sticky. It would be very painful if they lost access to it. But we've also tried to be good partners. And I think that's super important. That's if I go back to another lesson that I learned when I was at Cisco Systems in the at Silicon Valley, I was always, from outside, before I joined them, I was always like, why are they so popular? Their products are not super great. And I found out that, yeah, that's kind of true. But the reason why they were so popular was their team and the way that they treated their customers. They treated them as partners. And that's something that's also stayed with me. And I think that's also part of maybe not product market fit, but partner market fit, whatever.
Go to market fit.
I think in a lot of ways, products are never perfect. But if you're treating your customers correctly and with respect and all of this, and not just like as a dollar sign, I think they're more willing to forgive the little issues that pop up here and there.
Yeah. So integrations are painful, like you said. You went from managing 70 to managing 500. How did you manage that order of magnitude shift in scale?
Yeah. So, we started with a unified API like literally 20 years ago at one of my companies early on in ad tech. And then when we built Zoom.ai, which was an AI chat agent, basically in 2014, we had a unified API. We kept the sort of same architecture. And, lots of companies have done this, not lots, but several. Plaid was a very famous one in the fintech space. They basically created a unified API for all financial statements. So we built that again and we made it better. And we kept on doing that. But like I said, the maintenance was a big, big problem. We didn't fix that at any of the companies until unified. And so what we did here was we thought about how do we fix maintenance, but how do we build faster? I want to get to 1,000 integrations this year, right? And how do we do that? And like, do I hire 30 people? No, I really don't ever believe in that, but I certainly don't believe in that in 2026. And so we came up with...
And for anybody listening who's living under a rock and doesn't know what's happening and why it's different now, tell us why.
My engineering team is literally 10x more productive.
Yeah.
And it changed since December.
Do you think that, or do you think that, or do they think that, or you guys both think that?
So I would say that not everyone is 10x. We can get into details. Like, I think the seniors are X almost, like it's, and then the juniors are also like 10x. I think the ones in the middle are struggling because they've learned how to build efficient code, and that is not necessarily that important anymore. Efficiency is great, but the detailed artistry that developers had is not that important anymore. It's really about first principle thinking about the requirements and the curiosity and the trust of letting an AI coding agent actually research and then build. Anyways, I think that is very changing right now. I think we're going through wave, letting it do everything and then taking the repercussions of that, or just letting it do research and then going back to coding and back and forth. So that is a very, very fluid thing that's happening right now.
So the integration space already has some players, some pretty well funded as well. Why do you consider this problem unsolved?
Yeah, you're right. You can go back like 2005, Boomi comes out, right? Pass. Brand new industry, if you will, integration provider as a service, fancy term. And that came out because companies were starting to move to the cloud. You needed to move data back and forth. And before that, we had just plain ETL, extract, transform, load of databases. So that's where the data was. But it was all really internal. And then, a couple of other players and so forth. And you're right, 2020 and 2021 saw an increase in integration solution providers. They were all kind of based off of older technology, but they all tried to add in some sort of innovation, and they all got funded, to your point. If you remember 21, everyone was getting funded. There was lots of money going around. I'll tell you a good story, though, with this. So we started in early 23. After 21, early 23 was when the interest rates started to go back up.
Yeah, it was a tough year to be a investor. I mean, great year to be an investor. Tough year to raise money.
So we can raise any money. That was the thing. And we were like, hey, we have a couple of exits. We've been around, kind of thing, and like nobody was paying attention. And it wasn't us. Hopefully, it wasn't us. And so the short story of that is we basically made some decisions there that have been instrumental in our success in terms of automating, in terms of relying on AI, even early AI, that have helped us propel, because we couldn't rely on getting funded and then hiring a massive group of engineers. So we didn't. And we figured out a way how to be much more capital efficient. And to be honest, I actually don't think I or anyone should be going back to the way that we used to be. I used to go and raise a ton of money and then, hire a ton of people and spend it as we grew. I think those days are kind of over. We're just so much more productive.
Yeah. What does the world look like now then?
The world looks like very small teams that are leveraging multiple agents, whether it's a coding agent or marketing or whatever. But you can get so much done by understanding the problem of whatever it is, whether it's coding or marketing, but you don't need that many people to actually execute on it. So you could get it executed by an agent. I think we're still not quite, we can have a conversation around that. But I do believe that small teams can run as bigger teams. And we've always known this, middle management and all this. We saw Facebook fire all their middle managers, a couple of years ago, all of that. I think that's all true. But you have these little pods, very small pods, much bigger than like a extra large pizza box that we used to think about in terms of engineering teams. These pods are smaller and they can just run with the additions of these agents that are doing research, maybe coding, testing, just all of that.
So you've positioned as AI data infrastructure. What actually changed with AI that makes your product inevitable now?
Yeah, the way that I like to think about it, and this is what the thesis was when we started. Again, we saw ChatGPT 3.5 come out. We played with it. The previous versions weren't great. We had built our own AI at the previous company. Like I said, Zoom.ai was a chat-based agent for it was a secretary, an AI executive admin. And we had built all of our natural language processing. We built a neural network to understand who you are and how you like to work and all this, like a good secretary. And so we understood the requirements for AI data, but we also understood that data changed. This type of data wasn't like a static, like language to understand language. Language doesn't really change much. Business data changes all the time. Like every second, there's a new piece of data, new signal. And so that was one of the very first things that we looked at. How do we make this real time, not like fake real time? But then how do we get all the data, all the data from everything, not just like one thing? So those two components were pretty critical, and they were based off of our understanding of what AI would need. So we wanted to be, and this is still our core thesis. We just want to be the plumbing. Plumbing isn't very sexy, but infrastructure, plumbing, because what is carried in our pipelines is not oil, it's data. Data is the new fuel for AI. Why is that important? Because AI actually, even though today AI is sort of a bolt-on in a lot of ways of applications, AI really is becoming and really will become the core of AI software.
Well, it's kind of like the history of electrification. When electricity came to the factories, they had to redo the factory floors in order to lay them out properly for the reality of electric motors. And I feel like what's happening now, and I feel it at Team Ignite in my venture firm, I see it in my startups, in the portfolio, and lots of other places. We're sort of having to retool and rekit companies and organizations around the reality of this like electricity of AI. Do you believe that every SaaS company becomes an AI company? Or is that flawed somehow?
I think the definition of what is an AI company is almost irrelevant. Like,
well, it has .ai in the domain name, right?
it's like being in 2001 and getting a .web, a domain. Why? Right? And I'm not like, we can say why now. In 2001, there were people doing that, right? Because they were like, we're a web app. So that was cool. That wasn't cool for too long. I think we all realized that it was just a piece of technology, and it was the way of the future and the user interface. So I do think that AI, it's a piece of the core of how the stack, if you will, of how we build applications. It does so much that we used to do hand coded, if you will. It adds so much more power.
Yeah,
though.
now you can just dump me the JSON, feed it to the AI. The AI figure out kind of, what's in the output and try to write code to kind of conform. That's why you could do 500 of these instead of 60 whatever, and you struggled, right?
No, that's actually not what we do. And I don't think that necessarily will work out. And I don't think it is working out today, regardless of whether these models will get better, for sure. They're getting better every month, every week. Sometimes they go backwards. But I don't think that that's the proper way of doing software. I do think that software still has some deterministic qualities of it. You can't just dump free-form text, documents, whatever, into AI and tell it to do something. Because if you do that, how is OpenAI?
You said do. I gotta make it fun.
No, I know. But if you do that,
yeah.
So I do a lot of mentorship here in Toronto in the tech industry, and I'm always saying, like, if you do that, if you just like are a wrapper to ChatGPT API, like, what's to stop OpenAPI from just killing you? And we've seen this, right? So we saw the first versions of agents.
But I have really good prompts. My prompts are so good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Trust me. Now it's not even prompts. It's just like, look at the app that I made.
But I think a lot of, maybe in the 80s and 90s, people were like, isn't that just like an interface on top of a database?
Yeah.
Wasn't it kind of the same argument, kind of, in a way?
There's actually a lot of similarities to it. And we can talk about that. And I've been through those, and I've been thinking a lot about that. Am I just old and grumpy because I don't like this prompt stuff?
Yeah. No, I can feel myself getting older and grumpy. I think we're roughly, I'm in my mid 40s. So like I'm getting older and grumpier now. Yeah.
For sure.
Starting to get into that phase of my life.
But just back, I don't think you can just like throw JSON in and just say, hey, analyze this. And you can do this one time kind of thing. But I don't think that's the future of software in general. I don't think I think that's very sloppy, and it's not going to scale. But I do believe that at the core, we will have these models, whether they're LLMs, whether they're neural networks or some other.
It's some sort of cognition thing. I mean, you could almost make an argument that humans are next word predictors with emotion, right?
We're always looking for pattern matching, as I said earlier. Yeah. And just back to your abstraction layer. So yeah, back in the 80s, we were programming, I don't know what. 90s came out, and we had Pascal, this language, and it was an interpretive language. We're like, no, that's horrible. I want to code in like the natural language of the computer, right? And then we had C and C++. C++ was like, oh my God, it's like massive abstraction. And then
object-oriented programming, boom, right? Yeah.
And then JavaScript came out, and we were like, oh my God, no, can't do that.
Java? Is it Java?
No, JavaScript.
We say Java down here. We say Java.
Oh. No, Java. Oh, Java and Java. I don't know.
We say Java anyway.
So JavaScript never compiles down to like a computer language.
Right.
So like old timers like me are like, no, that's horrible. That's an abstraction layer. It's going to be slow.
Yeah.
Horrible. But then you think about all these abstraction layers on top of what actually the computer is doing in zeros and ones. There's a tremendous amount of layers. And so when you think about what AI is doing now, it's just another layer. And a good example of that is MCP. MCP, which is
what does MCP stand for? Tell the audience. Just in case
it almost
anybody
doesn't
doesn't
even matter. It's model control protocol. It's a protocol that Anthropic came up with for its AI LLM to talk to data anywhere, right? So like in Salesforce, but having the AI talk to it directly, and like you said, get JSON, because that actually is what happens, by the way. It takes JSON in a string format and then throws it into the prompt, and then the AI looks at it. kind of inefficient, if you will. But to my point, or to your point, it's just an abstraction layer. And if we have enough power, then we can do it, right? Because not in the 90s, we were like, we don't have enough power to run JavaScript. It's going to suck up all the CPU power. Things have changed. So maybe that's where we're getting. It's a very inefficient way of doing it. I'm hoping that we'll get better protocols that are more efficient.
How do you, I mean, that's part of what you guys are building, right? Do you guys think of yourselves as a tool or infrastructure?
Completely infrastructure. And in fact, we are so agnostic to the actual transport. Like I mentioned, MCP. We have like the largest MCP server on the planet, 22,000 tools. And if you read some of my articles, I am crapping all over MCP. It was like the worst protocol ever designed in the history of computers. I think I said that.
The only thing worse is OpenClaw, right? I'm joking.
How many people install that and then before running it were like, what should I do this? Okay.
I was watching a YouTube video on this at lunch as I was eating my noodles. You know, it was like, and I had the same experience after wrenching with it for like 20, 30 hours. I was like, this thing is not working for me. And I'm spending like $100 a day on tokens and it's not doing anything.
Yeah, I was more concerned about what it was stealing or what it was going to steal. So
right.
I never actually ran it because I did security for like 12 years. And so I'm always thinking about security.
Yeah, so many vectors.
I was like, it's good. Yeah. And then luckily I didn't do it. Anyways, so MCP, just another abstraction layer on top of APIs, which is an abstraction layer on top of something else. So bunch of different abstractions.
Right.
Yeah. It's good overall. I think the genie's out of the box with MCP. I'm just hoping that there's more efficient mechanisms to move data around. For us, it doesn't matter. We support REST. We supported GraphQL, which nobody cared about. And I have opinions on that, which a lot of people don't want to hear. But we supported gRPC, which is the Google thing that nobody ever uses. If someone comes up with some other protocol to move data, we'll support it. If a customer wants like, I don't know, 8-track tape, whatever they used back in the 90s, sure, maybe we'll look into it.
For the semi-technical audience, is the best way, everybody's pretty familiar with like using Plaid to connect their bank accounts to things. Are you guys basically the Plaid for all data across all infrastructure and all apps and all AI? Is that how to think about it?
Yeah, that's a really good way of thinking about it. We are the Plaid for B2B applications, basically. If you're building a B2B application, you will need your customers' data that's stored elsewhere, right? Because there's so many B2B applications. So I'll give you a really good example. You're building the next generation AI sales agent. You need access to your customer CRM because that's where the source of truth is. That's the core database, right? They're not going to upload that stuff to you. If you're building the next generation AI recruiter, oh my God, so many companies are doing that. You need access to the applicant tracking system. That's where the data is stored. That's the core. And it's the same thing. You're building a fintech, like so many AI CFO applications are being built today. Where's the core data? QuickBooks, right? And it's not just QuickBooks too, because QuickBooks is the monster. It has a majority of market share, but think about Xero or Sage Accounting, or think about going into Europe. Europe has a ton of other accounting. So like as you're growing, you're realizing that one integration is not sufficient. It's holding me back. So that's why we built Unified, basically.
Yeah. And that's why we backed you. For anybody listening, if you're wondering how I know Roy, we backed their company. And it's not our only thesis, but one thing we do look at when we back companies is like, can it help our other companies? And is it widely applicable across, enterprise, SaaS, B2B software, business use cases, right? And this is definitely like one of those things where you're building something that has, real infrastructure that everybody will need, and that creates a little bit of lock-in, right? Like, I guess that would be a concern if people are listening and you're building a B2B product, AI product, whatever it is. Like, will I actually be able to rip out Unified or do I need to like keep it forever?
So I've been an operator, as you said, this is my 5th company. And I have some opinions about being a nice company to work for. Because again, like you can have the best tech, but if
don't be evil, as Google says, right?
Yeah, I know. That's sort of gone sideways. But so the pricing model is really just and it's transparent. There's all of this stuff that is part of who we are and how I want to be treated as a customer myself. And honestly, when we started this, we were thinking about us as customers because we were actually thinking about building a totally different company.
So this is great. The founders love hearing this. What was the original idea? And you're like, you know what? Actually, we're going to pivot over here. Yeah.
It almost doesn't matter, but it was an AI sales agent. Okay. It was going to do it all.
Yeah.
There's lots of those now, but this was like 3 years ago. And then I said to myself, man, I'm going to need so many integrations because the data is all over. And it's not just CRMs. I'm going to need like enrichment platforms and messaging and blah, 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 calendar, all of this stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of different integrations to get that to work. Yeah.
And I got a headache, honestly. And I'm like, I can't do this again. I just built 70 at the last company. I built like 20 in the last company. And this was going to be my third Salesforce.
How can I give myself a migraine and do it for other people, right?
But it literally was. And I actually had a conversation with Salesforce at one point, and I actually told them this. I said, I was thinking that I needed to build yet another Salesforce integration at this sales startup that I was going to build. And it was going to be my third. And I'm like, I just can't do it.
So you remember like the Force platform and things like that?
I just couldn't do it. And I just shut down. I'm like, I'm not going and doing that because I'm going to have to build another Salesforce integration, and I can't do that anymore. So I took the summer off, and I'm like, I can't do that. And I don't have any other ideas. And then obviously we had this idea for a while. Ironically, I built a third Salesforce integration.
So far, I mean, you just crossed the revenue milestone. Congratulations. I mean, growth has been heavily inbound and founder-led so far. How are you looking to kind of scale? Is it just build a better product and people will find you word of mouth, or you have to actually go out there and pound people over the head with the message?
I don't think we're pounding anyone with the message. So we decided to do inbound and lots of different channels around that, and not just paid, like Google ads. There's quite a lot of options there. We haven't done outbound. I think the entire industry does outbound, dialing for dollars. So we did try and get our awareness up, try to get our word of mouth up. The product speaks for itself. The amount of integrations, how fast we go, all of that sort of differentiates us, not just on you guys are better than last year's competitor. No, like you guys are a totally different animal, like you're next generation kind of thing. So we've played around with that because we do really believe that. Like, to be honest, like the first year, we didn't even understand how different we were until we actually started getting customers. And they were like, this is completely different than what I've seen in the market. And you guys are able to do so much more. So that took us a while to figure out the right messaging around that. But it always has been inbound. The interesting thing in the last 4 months is the influence of LLMs in terms of inbound strategy.
Right.
And that's been a massive change. 40% of our inbound comes in from one of the LLM.
Crazy.
That is more than organic Google SEO.
That's wild.
Yeah.
We actually have a couple portfolio companies that help other companies, other Team Ignite companies and others figure out that. How do you show up in LLMs?
Yeah. So we're using a couple of tools, and now our team sort of understands a bit of the secret sauce.
Which tools are you using that you find success with?
There is a startup here in Toronto that we're using called peerview.ai. We've had great success. I know that there's others for sure.
Yeah, Zoma is one of ours, and then SiteFire is the other one. So we have two.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of SEO optimizers back in the day before Google got wise and changed the algorithm.
I'm sure LLMs will get wise eventually, and they'll try to lock that down.
And you know that OpenAI is basically the Google of 20 years ago, right?
It kind of is, yeah.
They're about to launch ads, right?
What does that make Claude, I think? What's the analogy? What is the Claude equivalent? They're the Amazon, AWS of AI, maybe? More infrastructure-oriented, more enterprisey? I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is they're about to monetize with ads. This was Google, like more than 20 years ago. Yeah. And then Google figured out that people were gaming it with these content farms and making a ton of money between ads and SEO search. And then they switched it overnight and they created this page rank algorithm. They changed all of this stuff and killed an entire industry. Yeah. I think that's
killed a lot of businesses, right? Same thing happened with Facebook and the social media feed. I remember I was working in ad tech. I came out of ad tech, so I know a lot about it. Yeah, they changed the whole ranking algorithm, and then they closed the API, actually, the API access. So you couldn't even push ads externally into their feed. You have to use their tools and things like that.
So that's an interesting topic as well. So one of the trends that we do see happening is the closure of APIs across the board. We saw it before with more old school enterprise companies that had very restrictive API access and sometimes would charge like tens of thousands of
Some
dollars.
ingress egress kind of fees, right? Yeah.
Yeah, even to their customers and sometimes to third-party partners.
That makes sense. Like, yeah, if you expose all my data on HubSpot, let's call it, or a Salesforce, and I can just pull it all out structured, I can just go vibe code something over the weekend to replace.
Yeah. So what's happening now is that we're seeing not just the enterprise companies do that, but a lot of companies thinking about, why do I have such a public API? Companies are just building stuff, vibe coding, whatever, but they're not using my platform. They're just sucking up the API. So I think that's an interesting problem going into the wrong direction. The solution that they're coming up with, the restricted, is, I think, wrong-minded.
Companies are closing their APIs.
Yeah. And I think that that's wrong, a solution for the problem today.
Yeah.
I think the right solution is what Salesforce has just done. And, to really understand what they're doing, you have to go back a couple of years. I've been looking at this because my customers are coming to me. They're software companies, sometimes startups, and they're thinking new things. And so I've gotten this front row about how the software industry itself is changing. And I've written it in LinkedIn and so forth. But the other guy who I think has gotten it even faster is Mark Benioff at Salesforce. He had this epiphany. He brought up AgentForce, really pushed it. You can debate whether or not it's successful.
Maybe a little too early, but sure.
Yeah, but I think he understands the ramifications of these changes.
Right.
He understands pricing model. He was the first one to talk about pricing model cannot be per seat. This is a vestige of when we used to buy CD-ROMs or even disks and plug them in and install it on a server, and then we brought it to the cloud.
Yeah.
And so,
increasingly, software is not a place where you go do work. It does work for you. And if it's doing work for you, then it doesn't make sense to price it per seat.
Exactly. And what he's launched and I think his next version of what he started with AgentForce is basically this agentic Salesforce that does not have a web interface. It is a bunch of APIs, and you get charged on usage. And that, I think, is where we're all headed. Because in the end, like you said, it's not you and me that are going to be like, how do I filter this pivot filter this table? No, we are not ever going to need to do that. The user interface that we've been spending $100 a month for on Salesforce is irrelevant. And he's actually picked it up. And I think that's really kudos, because in the end, Salesforce is just a dumb database. If you think about it in a SaaS application, and it'll be dead. Obviously, they're going to fight to stay alive, but its relevancy.
Well, you could do what some of the other companies are doing, just shut off your API access.
Or you can do that, but that is, I think, a short-term solution.
Yeah.
You're basically cutting off the supply of your partnership. And I think that is super important. It always has been and will continue to.
So if unified works, what does the world look like in the next 5 to 10 years?
So much data. I hope, and I do believe that even though we talk a lot about the SaaS apocalypse, it's just really a transformation of our industry. There will be more software applications. We see this today.
Probably more like the seat apocalypse. You heard it here first on the Ignite podcast. But because it's not like software as a service is going away. It's just seat-based software is going away.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I agree. Software for humans is basically going away, right? And our interface will be agents and swarms
Talking
of
to
agents.
APIs.
Talking to APIs to do stuff.
Yep. Right.
And each API will have benefits. And what are those benefits? And if your API is the same as another API, why use yours instead of someone else's? So I think we're going down to that level, which is interesting because we're going down an abstraction layer. Right. We talked about abstraction layers.
Yeah, kind of like, or headless is another phrase that people throw around, right? Yeah.
Yeah, completely. So I do believe that after the whole vibe coding thing, we're in it right now. There's millions of apps. Your grandmother's building one and trying to show it to you at dinner.
I built one the other weekend for portfolio construction, vibe coded it. It took me, a few days, probably 20 hours, but it's pretty nice. Yeah. I'm pretty proud of myself.
Some of the vibe coding apps we've seen come in here are better than anything commercial that I've seen. So that is what's going on. I think we'll move away from that because I don't think that model is scalable. You're not gonna launch your product and do GTM and all of that stuff. But most people aren't. But I think we will get to this more stable state where there's actually more software. Maybe it's smaller, but there's more software out there. The core, though, is still AI, which is the thesis that we have. And AI is just powered by data. So there's going to be a ton of data back and forth. And back to my point about the current protocols aren't too efficient. MCP is not efficient. Everyone is looking at LLMs as AI. That is one piece of AI. The LLMs, the transformers. There's so many other pieces of technology that is in that AI sphere that I don't think anyone's talking about anymore. And so when you put all those together and you have an efficient data pipelines through them, I think you won't need all those nuclear power plants just to transform a JSON object into something meaningful, because that is ridiculous.
Yeah. So do APIs disappear, get abstracted away, or something else?
I don't think they do disappear, actually. I do think that there are more of them. So that's my point. So the API is sort of like the raw state of data. You will need agents to interface with them. Maybe it's REST, maybe it's some MCP or a next version of that. So I am still bullish on MCP, and I think it'll just have an evolution step to make it more efficient. So I think that is going to be the core where companies are focused on, not the user experience, because there is no user, to your point. So I do believe that
the user is just an AI, right?
Yeah. And when I started Zoom.ai in 2014, I actually thought that was the right time. I thought that technology, that version of AI technology was good enough. And we were wrong. We were all wrong. Chat didn't work. It didn't understand us. It didn't generate, like, it was like not even close to what we see today. But I think that's getting better and better and better today, much, much faster. Plus all the other AI tech that we're not even including. So I think the web is sort of done in a lot of ways as the interface because of us.
Yeah.
If we're not there, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, it doesn't matter. So like, why build the forest?
It reminds me of Kevin Kelly's. Kevin Kelly wrote a book, What Technology Wants. And he kind of goes through technology, the history of technology for thousands, hundreds of years. And technology never really goes away. It gets, out of favor. And so the web will still be around. It just won't be in favor. And there'll be other mediums of collaboration and getting work done. You'll still be able to go to a website. Yeah. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you're like, I just want to go to the website and read. But it's getting rarer and rarer. Now, anytime I want to find information, I just ask the AI. And now it's increasingly do things. Just add this to the calendar, craft a response on this email.
So that is definitely what most of the companies are looking at today. I can tell you that. Both startups and very large companies that we've spoken with recently. It's not about reading data. It's really, the hard part is actually writing. And I could tell you that when we build API integrations, the writing, the updating, that is harder than reading. So that is definitely going on now.
I'll tell you, a bunch of humans dragging stuff into AI right now. Dragging and dropping.
Yeah, I did a little research for a LinkedIn post that I had an idea for, and I basically found a screenshot of a user interface from 3,000 years ago, and it's a spreadsheet. And it was like, I forget what it was. It was like the number of bushels of grain or something from Egypt. And it looks like an Excel spreadsheet, columns and rows and all this. And I'm like, we have not changed in 3,000 years, right? We're still using the same user experience elements that someone 3,000 years ago understood. And so when we're not involved, an agent is, we don't need those spreadsheets. We don't need that user experience.
Well, it can also think more multidimensionally too, LLMs. We kind of tend to think in 2 and 3 dimensions. That's a spreadsheet, it's 2 dimensions. And then a pivot table is like a 3rd dimension. Yeah, the LLM can kind of approach the data from lots of different directions.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a lot of unknowns, right?
Right now, space.
The LLMs are placating us in some ways, right? They're interfacing with us. What happens when they don't need to and they have freedom to figure things out themselves and communicate themselves? And they're going to create new ways of thinking that we can't. Your 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional analogy is quite correct.
Where do you fall in the AI is taking all our jobs and we'll have nothing to do argument?
I think that the Industrial Revolution took 200 years and it caused a lot of upheaval in jobs. There was a lot of people not having jobs until they realized what to do. I'm old enough
to factories in the cities, and that we had terrible job conditions. And
I remember traveling to Poland Warsaw in 1993 and seeing the post-Soviet wall collapse and seeing what that caused the population, lots of people understood what to do. They were like, capitalism, awesome, right? Lots of people, even more people did not. And they were lost. It was sad. And that happened kind of quickly. And I think that's kind of what could happen here. So we don't have 200 years. This is moving so fast. I'm not sure that I will ever hire a developer in 2027 and beyond, right? And I think I'm not the only one saying that. That's just one rule.
Yeah. As long as you have already a developer on staff who can collaborate with the AIs. You need one technical person to collaborate with the AIs, and that's maybe it. Or maybe no, maybe
I'm
not.
not
Maybe just a business person. Yeah.
that the role of developer will be needed in the future.
Wow.
And I am a hardcore coder. Even all of my executive jobs, I've always like coded to de-stress. So like me saying that is pretty big. I actually don't think, because that's the way we're going. And it's not just coding. There's a ton of stuff, ton of jobs, roles, tasks. So we'll still have jobs. There'll be less of them.
Yeah.
So what's everyone else who either can't transition quickly enough, and there's no way that most people are going to be able to. We're just not that adaptable. So what's going to happen? And so I think that if we don't want a pitchfork moment in history, we're going to have to bring in some sort of basic income, guaranteed income, something like that.
We'll just vibe code our way to success. I mean, we'll just ask the AI what to do. No big deal.
You can vibe code all you want, but who's going to be buying it? Because humans aren't going to be the users.
Right. I think it's a little bit of like, we're living through the singularity, and it's hard to kind of like picture what's on the other side of the event horizon of AGI and super intelligence for that matter, right? Like what does it mean to like exist and like do stuff? When the AI can spin up thousands, if not millions of agents and do its things, and then you have the embodiment of AI, which is robotics coming right behind it. And Tesla is now, shutting down whole product lines to build like robots. Yeah, I think we're in for some crazy exciting times. If you're a techno optimist like me, it's the most exciting time to live.
I agree. But what would you tell your kid to go and do?
That is a huge challenge. I don't know. You know what I keep telling them, because I do have 3 kids? It's like, just act like you're a billionaire already, because we all will be like super rich in the future because of AI and robotics. And like, what do you like to do? What do you like to do? What do you like to work on?
What human thing do you like? Because I think we, for the longest time, have done work that isn't really human. Like we shouldn't be doing it as humans. We're so much better than like punching in numbers into a spreadsheet.
Right.
Really?
Or so much better than email,
Yeah. Like if you think about the potential that we have, the evolution, and here we are. It's like, it reminds me of Lost. If you remember that TV show where like every 3 minutes they have to go and press a button on a terminal, right? It sort of feels like that. If you like stop for a second and look at the fluorescent lighting in your office, like, why am I here instead of not outside doing something nice? Yeah. Anyway, so I do think that we're going to get there more than what we've done, hopefully. But like I said, I do worry though that we could have a pitchfork moment. There's a lot of upheaval, and it's such a massive scale that I think will cause ruptures in society if not taken at heart by governments.
Right. But then we'll have super intelligent AI to help guide us.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're going to have like AGI, this whole like, super intelligent. Yeah, like they're already more intelligent than you and I.
In some dimensions, for sure. Yeah.
For sure. And I think that's just going to get better for sure. But whether or not they are more human, and it's hard to define, right?
Spider diagrams, like, AI, and then it just sort of slowly goes out to all skill levels. And some things, like you said, it's way more advanced, like this, like spider diagrams way out here. And then other places, it's not quite reaching human levels yet, but like eventually that spider diagram consumes all the human capabilities.
So I tell my kid plumbing, by the way, become a plumber. That's the last where AI is going to go.
Like a nurse,
Yeah. Human to human. So, well, that's the other thing, right? I love hiring human support, technical support people, because they are talking to other humans. And I think that is important. And that I think is part of our secret sauce, actually. But what happens when my customers are not human? They're agents. I don't need a human. That actually becomes a liability. So I think we will start to get into that. Just like we go to an ATM and get cash. banks haven't gone away, but the way that we operate with the bank has. We don't need a human to give us cash anymore. I think that is the direction.
Well, the average size bank used to have 1,000 employees. You know, the average like 50 billion, whatever it is, 100 billion AUM bank, like in the early 80s, had I think something like 800 or 1,000 employees. Don't quote me on this. And now it's gone down to 8 people.
Yep, and I think that's a great analogy. That's exactly where we're going to go.
But yet, even with ATMs, there's more branches than ever, right? Because now people want to go into the branches, so there's more retail bankers than ever. So there you go. Let's do some wrap up questions. What's a decision that you made at Unified that felt wrong at the time but turned out to be right?
Actually, I thought about this question, and it's actually what I just said. Not having AI support, and actually, I know someone here in Toronto very well, and he runs a very successful AI support company. But I really wanted to do this more old school because I do still believe in the interaction that happens between humans and the trust. And I think humans, we operate under this trust model, but we make decisions irrationally based off of trust and likability and so forth. And so I did not want to cut that expense of human support. And at the time, it felt really wrong. It felt like I was out of date, to be quite honest. And as a startup, you're looking at your dollars, right? And like, where do I allocate these funds to? And I could allocate it to sales instead, let's say, to grow. But I chose to really sort of push hard on human support. And honestly, every single employee at the company does support, not just our support team. And it's something that I really push hard because I want everyone to understand what the customer problem is, but I also want the customer to know everyone's name and their face and how they act and all of this, because in the end, humans like interacting with humans. It reminds me of Terminator, right? When they're trying to figure out who's human coming in. And
so you've been an investor. What's an advantage that you have that you think is invisible to most investors?
I think it's always been easy to dupe some investors because they're not technical enough. They don't know exactly where the market's going and what the meta of the market is. A big strategic coming in or people moving to some other way. So I think, for instance, like I don't invest if I don't fully understand the market and I don't understand and I don't care necessarily about the technical stuff, but I have to understand the market and where it's going. And I think a lot of investors are looking at numbers, whether the revenue is going up or whatever. And I don't think that is sufficient. And especially tech has always been fast moving. Like I said, again, it's so fast right now. You look at 2023 vintage companies or 2024 vintage companies that were doing vector databases. Those are mostly dead, right? And so it's very, very fast, even if you're investing in AI or like agents. Agents came in, they're still here, but I would say that these are next gen, these are V2 or whatever. The V1 things they're all dead. Like all those investments, just write-offs, in my opinion.
Yeah. So speaking of that, what's a question you wish more investors asked you?
I think some of them do ask the right question, which is what a question I would ask, which is, why do your customers choose you? But I think really sort of getting underneath, not just like, great product, whatever, right? Everyone can say that, but like really trying to figure out why we're different. And I think everyone does say, we're very scalable, we're very next gen, all of these marketing fluff terms that everyone uses. But like, how do you figure out what really is true? And I think customers understand because customers have the pain and they have the reason for looking for a solution for their pain. And so they really understand the differences. And so asking those right questions about what does the customer say? Why do they say that? Tell me something interesting that the customer said that they wouldn't say about anyone else, kind of thing. And I think you'll find those little diamonds that sort of signify that, yes, there's something different here. Now, that is tech product. I think when you're doing early stage investing, it's really the people.
Yeah. What's something about your product that customers value that you didn't expect?
I'll tell you why. So the first problem with data integrations is getting authorization. And it's not an easy problem to solve because it's not you authorizing access to your Salesforce account. That kind of is easy because you know yourself and you're like, sure. It's really getting your customer, someone who doesn't necessarily know you, doesn't maybe trust you or whatever. Maybe he's not technical, probably isn't. So that was actually a really hard problem and something that we solved like very, very early. And then we sort of made it work like seamlessly. And we never thought about it. We just stopped talking about it. We didn't even have it on our website. And we realized that that was like a massive differentiator for like the previous generation of these tools, solutions. And our customers came in and they were asking us all sorts of questions. We were like, yeah, no, you don't have to do that. Don't worry about that. And we just didn't realize how much we've solved that one singular problem until literally 2 years after we started the company. And then we're like, hey, maybe there's a lot of value here. Maybe we should promote this because people are like, really, like, it's really hard to get this to work properly. And we have it. And nobody ever talks about it. Nobody ever says, oh, there's a bug with it. Like, it just works. And it works across everything. So it's something that we just sort of forgot about it. And then we had to bring it back in terms of promoting it and talking about it. Because for us, it was like, yeah, whatever, it's done, it works.
What's a belief about building startups that you've changed your mind on recently, now that you're on your fifth startup building in the age of AI?
I'll tell you what hasn't changed. People. Just like building a group is always important, regardless of if you're a startup or not. Just like getting like-minded people, but not too like-minded. People that are going the same path. I think it's super important. But something that has changed, obviously, the way that we're so profitable, productive, efficient is something that has surprised me. I knew that, all of my companies have been very efficient, capital efficient, but now with the new technology and the new processes that enables, it is insane how efficient we've become. And like we talked about, you're going to have like a team of 10 people at a company who build amazing products who can get like $100 million of revenue. And I think that is going to be a common thing.
Yeah. Well, you could argue OpenCloud was the first one-person unicorn, right? Just Peter Steinberger of open source project, acquired for what, 1.2 billion, OpenAI, something like that?
Yeah, a bit of an outlier.
Bit of an outlier, yeah, but kind of the first one-person unicorn,
Yeah, I think I read an article about this other guy out of LA or something who basically did the same thing. One person.
I saw that one as well. Got it to like 400 million in revenue, something like that.
And he's going to hit $1 billion this year.
So that's wild. Last question: where can folks find you online and find out more about Unified?
Yeah, so unified.to.
What's the .to? What is that?
There's a good story right there. When I moved back to Canada from Silicon Valley, I moved to Toronto. Toronto, if you don't know, third largest city in North America, if you don't include Mexico. Mexico City is bigger than everything. And also third largest tech hub in North America.
Right.
So lots of talent here. And funny story is there is a Pacific Island nation called Tonga that its TLD, its internet domain, was TO. Someone here in Toronto 20, 30 years ago got this bright idea about buying it and licensing it basically and paying a royalty to Tonga for it. And so now we have our own city domain. And I've heard it's one of the largest revenue sources for Tonga is the registration fees for .to. So why .to? Not because I live here, because .io, .com, .ai, all of those things were taken. And I do not like long domains. I had Zoom.ai before. I had shiny.com before. Anyways, all one word. I wanted unified.
Love it. Yeah, we have teamignite.ventures, teamignite.vc, and we have tiv.com. I'm thinking about switching everything to tiv.com because it's just so short and punchy. Typing out teamignite.ventures is it's so many letters, so many characters.
Yeah. It just irks me.
Yeah.
So I'm always like one word. And so you have to figure out how to get that. And the dot whatever doesn't matter anymore, honestly. So nobody cares.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed the conversation, Roy. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian.